three of you were in the production that has just finished at the Met and also in this production. And all of us are experiencing for the first time that we've had a new ring in 20 years, which I guess is about a generation. And I would be interested in your experience, we can maybe start with Ms. Harmer, on what it's like, the differences in performing in the Schenk production and in performing in this one, as a performer.
Sure. In the Otto Schenk production, I played Freya as well. I played Ortlinda. In Valkyrie, I sang Third Norn in Götterdämmerung, and I covered Gutrune. So I spent a lot of time with Otto Schenk. And through various discussions, we realized he designed that production the year before I was born. So whatever else was happening, it was potentially time for a new ring. And that no matter what I thought about leaving the old ring behind, really being part of a new ring and being part of a new ring at the Metropolitan Opera is a once, maybe twice in a lifetime opportunity. And I think that being in the two productions, there seems to be two different camps of ring cycles. There's the beautiful Otto Schenk, Stephen Wadsworth style rings that are magical and they have the fairy tale colors and they're just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And then you have the LA, maybe San Francisco side, which is much more industrial. And it seemed that the Lepage ring is trying to live a little bit in the middle, to have moments of traditional costumes, moments of traditional interactions, but with a very, very futuristic scenery, if that's what we're calling the machine. So being with the two, living with the two rings, there is a huge difference. And I think the biggest difference, those of us that were in Rheingold, I think noticed that first week, much of the discussion was about how to stay safe. And there wasn't, really, there was a lot of discussion. Hans-Peter and I spent a lot of time on top of the machine while it's moving. So there wasn't as much freedom as there had been in the previous ring to do what we wanted to do. Because if I wanted to run across to Hans-Peter, there was a good chance, or run away rather from Hans-Peter, there was a good chance I would fall 30 feet. So that's not an option. Yeah. So the options then became very limited to what can I do with my text to make it appear I'm scared because I can't run away because I'll die. And what can I do with my body to appear something as opposed to physically doing what you would have thought the music was asking you to do.
Really? Did you once feel unsafe on that?
Not so much unsafe as just unsure. It's just not something I had ever dealt with before. There's a moment in Rheingold, for example, when the planks are a wall, and we're standing on a platform about 20 feet above the stage, and the machine folds over like this to represent the hands of the giants. And right as it starts moving, they said, the moment you can see, you should start running out to the edge of the plank. And I said, while it's moving? And they said, oh yeah, absolutely, just start running. And I said, but it's moving. And they said, that's okay, it's locked. They're always locked. They're always locked, it's okay. And I was like, all right. So I did it, and it was fine. And a few weeks later, we had a touch-up rehearsal. And in this touch-up rehearsal, I go to start running, and the plank next to me free falls about 20 feet. And Franz Josef Selig was standing next to me, and he moved me from the falling plank. And then there was a very long discussion about safety. That was the first time they finally sat down and said, do you want to know how the machine works? And I said, yes, I do. I do want to know how the machine works. And does it have brakes? Yeah.
Robert Lepage had a very interesting interview in the Associated Press recently where he noted that everybody's talking about the machine, everybody's talking about the machine, everybody's talking about the lighting and the machine, and nobody's talking about the fact that they worked on the show, they worked on the acting, they worked on the relationships and on the characterizations. And I think that exactly what I was going to ask you two. I don't think I've ever seen a Gunther-Gutrune relationship that was as nuanced, as full-blooded as that. And I'd like to ask you, what happened in the rehearsal?
We spent weeks before we ever saw the machine. Robert also talked, this is the first point in the ring during which I play a mortal. And Robert, I've been a goddess up to this point, Freya, and then a Valkyrie, and just in general. But he he spent more time. That's never ever been discussed with me before. In a complete ring, when you get to Gutrune, if you have been singing other roles, Robert was the first one who pointed out, you're mortal, you're going to be different than you were as Freya, you're going to be different than you were as Gutrune or Gerhilde, or Linda or Gerhilde. This is a different person. We also talked at length about my relationship with Hagen, just Robert and I on my own, saying that so frequently Gutrune hates him from the beginning, and that it doesn't really make sense. There's nothing in the libretto that tells me I can't like my half-brother, that I can't trust him. I think it's very clear. Gutrune doesn't have a mother and father anymore. This is it. This is her family. Her family unit are these two brothers. And Gunther is really her father, her brother, her everything. And Hagen is kind of everything else. And that, yes, they're not a full sibling, but there's no reason she can't like and trust him from the beginning. If she hates him from the moment the curtain goes up, why on earth is she going to do what he says? Yeah. You know, he says, "Ooh, remember that drink?" And she would say, if she hates and distrusts him, absolutely not. I'm not giving that to Siegfried. This is clearly somebody she trusts and relates to, or she's not going to do his bidding. She's not going to trust that his plan is the best plan.
Well, if I may, can we distinguish between finding new audiences and finding new ways to interpret a familiar text? A lot of people, without having seen it, condemn productions in Bayreuth or productions in Staatskapelle or someplace where they feel somehow, oh, well, Lear doesn't take place in a men's room. Why are you doing this? Why do you have rats running around during Wagner? You know, have any of you been in a production where you finally came, giving it your best? You nevertheless finally came to the conclusion, this is just not for me. You know, I can't do this.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to name names unless you want to. I'm just asking you.
I've done a handful of productions of La Grande Duchesse. I don't know if you know this piece. It's this fun, sexy romp. It's basically vaudeville. And I was working with a director who desperately wanted to make it political satire. She thought it would be the greatest thing in the world if we dragged every political joke we could into this fun, sexy romp. And I sat there and I looked at the libretto, and first of all, not a bit of it could be justified, not one bit. And really, at the end of the day, after a couple days of discussions, I just said, you know, I doubt your patrons are coming to this opera and praying, oh, I hope this is 3 hours of making fun of various political figures. I pray that I can sit through 3 hours of really bad jokes about war, and maybe there'll be some good music at the end. I kind of think what they wanted, when you buy a ticket to La Grande Duchesse, I think you hope you see Stephanie Blythe sing the socks off of it, and that you see some really gorgeous, beautiful costumes. And for that piece, that's what I think people wanted to hear. On the complete other side, I was in a production of Don Giovanni, where from the beginning...
Why is it always Giovanni?
It's always Giovanni. But I bought it. I didn't want to buy it. I walked in, I saw the designs, I thought, oh no, it's 80s punk rock. I don't know. And by the end of the first week, I bought it because there's always a Giovanni. There's always a smarmy Giovanni.
Well, are you saying that it succeeded despite the director, or did the director's views?
I think the director made it work because the director found ways, if the libretto supports it, if the words that the composer wrote support your idea and you want to make it new and exciting, have at it. But if what you're trying to say can't be said through this opera, pick a different opera or pick a different play or pick, you know, if what you want to say is green and this opera is blue, go find a green opera. Like, you can't force this square opera into a round peg. And if that's what you want to say and that's your personal need is to say that, fine, say it, but don't force an opera to say it when it just doesn't make sense.